Air Force didn't play very well. They just did their own thing. And quite frankly, when the Air Force pilots learned about being grounded, none of them went to the program. And I think that's important to say, because, it talks about how we deal with people and cohorts, and what's the ramifications or unintended consequences, okay? So the Air Force, the pilots, went out into the rumor mill, to the back channels. Do not go to Brooks because you'll be grounded.
And my having ground, X-ray 1, ready to check. 1, 2.
Welcome to the Naval Aviation Ready Room podcast, where the stories, leadership, and leading-edge technology of naval aviation come alive. Hosted by retired Navy Captain Ryan Keyes, this podcast takes you beyond mere museum artifacts as he delves into the personal stories, pivotal decisions, and state-of-the-art hardware that define the world's most prolific aviation force.
Welcome to the Naval Aviation Ready Room podcast. Today's episode, we're going to be featuring Dr. John P. Albano, MD, who received his MD from the University of South Dakota Medicine and is a retired Army colonel, flight surgeon, has over 25 years of combined clinical, research, academic, and executive medicine experience. He has many qualifications. One I'm definitely interested to talk about here is called Human Research Subject Use Training. We'll get to that. He has received the following honors, though, which I think sound to me very distinct. Order of Military Medical Merit from the Army Medical Department Regiment. Order of Air Medical Merit from the Society of U.S. Army Flight Surgeons. Honorable Order of St. Michael Knight from the Army Aviation Association of America, and Honorable Order of St. Dominic from the Army Space Professionals Association. Those sound really cool. But really, the reason why we're having Dr. Albano on today is that he currently serves as the Robert E. Mitchell Center for POW Studies here on NAS Pensacola. So, Dr. Albano, welcome to the Ready Room.
Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah. So he is the expert when it comes to, I would say, POW studies.
Correct. Yeah.
We were fortunate enough on a few days ago to actually interview Charlie Plumb, who if everyone doesn't know, a well-known Navy fighter pilot, shot down, spent over 2,103 days in captivity throughout various prisons in North Vietnam, including the Hanoi Hilton, obviously. And so the POWs actually come to NAS Pensacola every year for an annual physical, which is, to me, I never knew this happened until I met Charlie actually personally a little over a year ago. But again, we'll get to that. But first, I would like just have Doc to kind of talk about your experience, how you became a flight surgeon, what interested you about aviation, and then eventually we'll get to how you got here.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that introduction. Very kind of you. And yes, what got me interested in the military to begin with probably goes to the Health Professions Scholarship Program.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like a medical equivalent of the ROTC program.
Yeah, it's fantastic, actually.
So it helped me, get through medical school.
Yeah.
Then I had a commitment, and my first tour of duty was Fort Rucker, Alabama.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Mother Rucker, right?
Mother Rucker, that's
Yeah,
exactly right. And so, that's, of course, home to Army Aviation, just like Pensacola is the cradle of naval aviation. So that's the Army equivalent up there. And as a general medical officer, I got exposure to the Army aviation flying. And I found I really liked flying. It was in the backseat, but in the treetop level flying, to me, was just looking out the door, just leaning over. That was really cool.
Helicopters are cool. Aren't they? Yes.
Yes, they are. As a matter of fact, I think, as a side, I was in the last class that went through training and actually flew the helicopter.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
in
the
the front
classes
seat.
after me just sat in the back seat.
Yeah.
But we had actual flight training.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
so
great.
learning how to fly the helicopter
Yeah,
was
that's right.
kind of interesting.
A little different than an airplane.
A little different than an airplane.
Yep.
But part of that, I was really taken by how the aviator was really, like to say, healthy. They
Okay.
tried to stay away from sick call, and that was,
okay.
because they don't want to be grounded. It's
Okay.
kind of like the bottom line.
Sure.
And I kind of get that. So they only come to the flight dock when they have to.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's the flight dock isn't a bad word, but yes, I would say as aviators, because you don't want to be grounded, right? You want to keep flying. So you saw that as something you wanted to help with.
That's correct.
Okay.
Because then you were dealing with folks who were trying to stay healthy.
Yeah.
And that gave me the idea, well, how is that different from a sports?
Like sports
Sportsman.
medicine guy.
No, it's sport. The athlete,
sport.
the
Oh,
athlete.
got it.
But the sports medicine guy too
Okay.
is kind of like, well, they want to get into the game, and how do you keep them into the game?
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. You put that together with the military, how to keep the warrior into that game, because that's important. I said, well, that's preventive medicine right there, and that's what I want to do. I want to help keep these guys healthy so they can do their duties. And so that got me into aviation. And so after a few years at Fort Rucker, at that time, the Army went to the Air Force for aerospace medicine training. That's for specialty training, and aerospace medicine is a part of the preventive medicine board, just like occupational medicine,
Oh, yeah. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's those three things that preventive in nature versus the other specialties are more treatment and curative.
Yeah, right.
This is to prevent the injuries.
Yeah, PrevMed.
PrevMed, exactly
Yeah.
right. Yeah. And so say, hey, that's what the military is all about. Gotta keep the warrior edge sharpened. We help do that. And so I said, yeah, I'm all in on this. And so I went to the Air Force program in San Antonio.
So the Army didn't have a flight surgeon program at the time, and you had to go to the Air Force in order to do that.
That's correct.
Did you have the opportunity to go to the Navy, or was it mainly just a thing between the Army and the Air Force?
Actually, the Navy had one, like here, as you said, or applied in Pensacola. And so the Army went with the Navy in 2000 because the Air Force wasn't answering the mail, and the
No
Army...
way. Wow, switched it up, huh?
Yes way.
Okay.
Yeah, so later in my career, I became an associate director to the Navy program, and that was in 2003.
As an Army officer?
As an Army officer, with our Army residents going through the Navy program, that's correct.
Wow, that's joint then, I would say, huh?
That is joint.
Yeah, I would say they don't really probably use that term maybe, but it really is.
Yeah.
Okay. What did you think of the difference then between your Air Force, and not to belittle or deride anybody, but what did you see between the Air Force initial training and then later kind of being associated with the Navy? If you compared the two, was there something distinct about either one that you liked or didn't really care for?
Well, I will say this, that the Navy program, the Navy mindset, is a whole lot like the Army mindset, operationally oriented, And so, and the Army leaders at the time at the RAM program were sensitive to what the Army was trying to get out of the program, because of course the Army was not in charge of the program. So they go in and say, hey, we want this kind of training. There are certain domains, we get it at a certain level, let's say, 04, 05, you start doing joint things, but they normally get out there and do domain things like, the ground or the air, the sea, whatever kind of thing. But the Navy was open to accommodating the Army.
Wow.
So it's all about relationships.
It is. It is. I had a skipper tell me one time life is about relationships.
Yeah.
So yes, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. That's a very interesting insight. I did not know that the Army, I've only dealt with, I guess, Navy flight surgeons in my I would say I dealt with an Army flight surgeon in my joint tour. I was at Fort Belvoir, and so I was up there and had a flight physical done. So I did get that done at an Army hospital for sure, but I didn't know kind of their training track. Okay. So, quite interesting. All right.
And before we go on, please. Just so I don't forget, part of the Air Force program was we went to SEER, level C training.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the survive, evade, resist, escape training.
Okay.
Everything we went
So you got to do that as a flight surgeon?
I did. In Fairchild.
Yeah. Been there, Fairchild Air Force Base. Oh, yeah.
So I'm not a POW, but I play one on TV.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, actually, Charlie and I were talking about that the other day, our SEER experiences, because he actually went to SEER school at Warner Springs in California, and I went there too.
Okay.
He went there in 1965. I went there in 1996, 97 time frame. And I don't know how much it's really changed in between those 30 plus years or anything like that. But that's interesting. I don't remember us having flight surgeons in my class. So that's pretty unique experience that you got there.
Exactly. And so when I went to the Navy program as the Army liaison, and I acted or functioned like the assistant program director for the aerospace medicine residency program for the Navy, I tried to bring this into the Navy, this joint mindset and also this joint experience, because of the Air Force, quite frankly, I think that was a really good idea. The Army didn't do it either, but since then the Army's got a SEER program up at Fort Rucker. Yeah, they do. But yeah, that's part of, that kind of experience. You bring it to the training environment and try and get that across.
So did that experience, so how early was that in your career? Was that during your flight surgeon training in San Antonio when you went through that?
That's correct, in 93. So just a
Oh,
couple few
okay,
years
okay,
before yours.
a little before me, a little before me. So did that spur something in your head again? Or maybe not about, hey, this whole being a POW, this focus on being a prisoner of war and the mental and physical resilience that goes into that. Is that something that you thought about when you started working at Robert E. Mitchell at that point? Or, was it kind of was that, that seed planted in your head once you finished your school to say, hey, this is something that I really think is important?
Okay, yeah, so that's a good question. Again, that's early in my career. And so definitely the seed was planted, but obviously I focused on operations and what I had to do as a flight surgeon out there in the forward areas kind of thing. But when I got to the Mitchell Center as a contractor after I retired from the Army in 2012, I was hired on as a contractor physician just to evaluate. And this is where I got a little bit more in-depth training and understanding, especially talking to the guys. Who else can talk to these guys on a yearly basis about the stories? I mean, you can read about them, but when you talk to them, it's like, oh, wow, that is what brought a lot of personal fulfillment, and knowledge, and then, a direction, I think. Yeah.
So going back in time a little bit again, so you get through flight surgeon training with the Air Force, and essentially then kind of bebop between different units as a flight surgeon at that point throughout the kind of the rest of your, I guess, active duty Army time. Was there any couple highlights during that time that you'd like to kind of talk about?
Oh, yes. Well, and I really cherish this, and really do, is the relationship we have with the Navy. And it's I try to bring, a joint mindset, also a joint experience, and space was becoming big as well. So we got aerospace in our namesake, if you will, aerospace medicine. So we did a lot of aviation stuff, but what space were we doing? And so the Army had stood up a think tank of aerospace, not aerospace, missile defense.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, the
yep.
Star
Oh yeah,
Wars,
that's right.
yeah, the Star Wars things,
Yeah.
that was part of the Army think tank,
Okay.
but they got two operational brigades. One was Space Brigade and one was a Missile Defense Brigade. Now, the Air Force had lead in terms of nuclear retaliatory,
Mhm.
first strike capability, or strike like that. But when the defense became defense missile,
Mhm.
then the Army stepped up to the plate. If you
Oh
will.
sure, yep.
And so that was kinetic kill. That's
Yeah.
missile on missile,
Yep.
versus, a nuclear going in.
Right.
And so the Army became a big part. And part of that was the Army's missile brigade. They deployed them out there in Delta Junction, Alaska, is where they're headquartered at. And the the Space Brigade is at Peterson Air Force Base.
It is. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
where our Missile Defense Agency is based out of.
That's correct.
Yep.
That's correct. So, the Army starts sitting next to Air Force guys who were in the missile defense game.
No kidding. How did what was the medicine, I guess, aspect of the missile defense side of it? Was it just kind of monitoring the people to make sure that they can complete their mission, like you said, keeping warfighters in the game? Is that what it was?
Yeah, and that's very challenging because of the mindset. Now, the Air Force, their decisions to monitor their missile folks were flight surgeons, and of course, they have standards for
Okay.
missile council, kind
Yep.
of people. Now, the Army, because they came from the air defense and artillery
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
branches,
Air Defense Artillery, ADA.
yeah,
Yep.
they don't know what a flight surgeon is.
That's a great point. Yeah, I didn't really think about Air Force Missileers being essentially in the flight program, but you were right, they probably are considered that, right? Because they have, like I said, all the mental and physical requirements sitting in a silo for days
That's right.
on end.
And with the stress of having to push that button, maybe,
for sure.
Or the discipline that you have to push it when somebody tells you to push it,
That's right.
So you've got to be very sound in yourself, and you got the flight surgeon monitoring, make sure nobody is going to crack.
Yeah.
Right.
Never really thought about that at all.
Yeah.
Wow. Kind of blowing my mind.
So when that happened, the Army was sitting there, and the Army didn't have those standards. And so the Mr. Lewis is saying, how come this Army guy can sit next to me on council and not have those standards? And so there was discussion in the aerospace medical community and all services, about, well, what's the Army standard, And there wasn't none, because we never had that need before. So that's where, one of my crowning achievements, I believe, is I identified a slot or need or requirement for a command surgeon for the Army Space and Missile Defense Command up at Huntsville. You need it because you got 2 brigades. And when you have a brigade, you need to have a medical program, because when you're a think tank, you just do the tenant activity. You're a tenant activity, and you just do the base hospital care. But when you got deployed people, you gotta have a program. So you need a command surgeon. The command surgeon should probably be a flight surgeon, because flight surgeons were associated with the space and the astronaut guys, because of the occupational standards and all that kind of stuff. So somebody who's operationally oriented, flight surgeons are. And then I got a billet, and then I filled it.
So through the think tank, you created the billet, and then you filled it after the think tank. That's pretty good, actually. I mean, there's a lot of people who create or in a billet as a active duty 06 on a staff, and then they retire, and then they come back the next day as a civilian and have the same job because they flipped it from active duty to GS.
Yeah.
So, but that's essentially though, you saw a need and a requirement, identified it, and then you probably filled it with the person who had the most experience at the time, right?
Right, because I brought that curriculum into the Navy flight surgeon program, the residency program. So we brought in the space training, like aviation operations training. They go fly airplanes. Why? To understand the aviation environment. So we need to bring in space operations and training to understand the space operating environments. Yeah, and then we can make the standards and not just accept a standard shoved down our throat by somebody who's got
Exactly. Then maybe you don't think it's valid.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would say it's not valid because at that time, those standards were valid for the Air Force because it was a nuclear issue, where the Army came into this, it's not a nuclear, it's kinetic kill.
Right.
Yeah. But nonetheless, I think there needs to be discussion on what those medical standards should be. And that's why I think it should be flight surgeons, because we have our conferences that we go to, and all services go to that, and they talk at those conferences about the occupational requirements, and so if we have intelligent medical talking about that particular occupation, at least the Army needs to be driving what the requirements are and not, standards forced upon them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, talk about, like you said, joint in the, and I mean, so what time frame, what year was this when you became the command surgeon of that brigade? Or that unit?
The command. Space Command as a 3-star. That was 2010.
Okay. So that was your last job as active duty then at that point?
That's correct. My last tour of duty.
Well, it's like pinnacle, right? Yeah. Oh my goodness, you played that well.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay. Very neat. And then during that time, you were able to essentially, like you said, kind of turn ADA in missile defense into, I want to say it wasn't valid before, but now essentially because when you have a flight surgeon, I mean, it kind of gives you, I'll say, legitimacy necessarily for those soldiers and the MOS, military occupational specialty. I'm not sure what the Army, if they call it MOS or not.
Same.
And so, but now you're elevating those soldiers with that MOS, because there's an extra requirement now for them to do their job, and it requires, hey, I have physical standards, mental standards that go along with it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me go off on a tangent because
Yeah,
I think
please.
it's important too.
Yeah.
Is that, okay, so you just said that, and I know that anybody says who's a flight surgeon say, I'm going to send you to Houston, to NASA to work. And you know, everybody's raising their hand, send me, right? Well, the Army talked about that because, you know, since the shuttle experience, we had astronauts. Before it was just Navy and Air Force astronauts that flew, you know, the Apollo missions, the Gemini missions, et cetera, et cetera.
Because they're all pilots, right?
Right.
And they weren't. I know you're going to go to mission commanders, right?
Right.
Like scientists.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. So I don't want to steal your thunder, please.
No, that's good. That's good. But also the lunar module is a hovercraft. It's kind of like a helicopter. It's not really.
Oh. There you go.
Touché.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks.
But anyway, they say, well, we need to have a flight surgeon. Well, those Army astronauts, they're actually Army people loaned to NASA to do their job. They still have flight physicals, and they belong to the Army Space and Missile Defense Command. And so if you're a flight surgeon, command surgeon, you could certainly do kind of like a telework or, you know, virtual physical exam with your pilot, you know, for his pilot standards. And then space standards, of course, are NASA standards, you know, you go by NASA space standards. But the flight surgeons at NASA are retired military, you know, and we all go to the same conference. Because now you can see how this is all leveraging all the good things that's there, right? And that's why I think the command surgeon should have been a flight surgeon. Yeah.
Yeah. So also, tangent, not sure how many Army trained astronauts there have been. I don't know that number. I need to look that up.
Yeah, I don't know it either. I should know, but I don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to look that one up. Okay. Because I know that I think Annapolis has the most. They've created the most astronauts, Annapolis grads, and I think Stanford is actually like number 2.
Okay.
When it comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm not sure how many. Because who's Neil Armstrong was a. No, who? I'm trying to think now. No matter. So I'll have to look that up. All right. So you then transition. Awesome career, like I said, throughout the Army, retire as a colonel in 2012, and then you become a contractor. So what leads you from being up in Huntsville and dealing with space and missile defense, and now moving back down here to the cradle of naval aviation and dealing with prisoners of war?
Okay, very good. It's personal. I tell how personal it is.
Fantastic.
Yeah, of course, my wife and I were here for the Navy Aerospace Medicine residency program.
Yep.
I did a geo bachelor up to Huntsville to finish that. My wife stayed here in Pensacola. Why?
Got it.
Because we had plans to retire in Pensacola because we loved the beach.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I moved down here too. I mean, the Emerald Coast, right?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a reason why it's called that.
And the sands are so fine.
Oh, they are.
Oh, man.
Gorgeous.
Gorgeous. Yep. So we knew we were going to retire here. So, yep. So I came back home.
But then to not work anymore, were you still going to practice medicine, or did you not have that feeling? But then, was the Robert E. Mitchell Center? So I guess let's go back in history and talk about the center itself. So then when was that established? Did you know about it prior to 2012? I assume you did. Mm-hmm. And then you said, hey, I'm going to go put an application in and I want to work there because of my SEER experience or my experience with aviators or whatever it is. So please tell me about that.
All right. So you're correct. The Robert E. Mitchell Center POW Studies program started basically like in 1972 when there's talk about releasing the POWs from Hanoi. Yeah, okay. So it was a deliberate, thought out protocol that was designed by all the services. Dr. Robert E. Mitchell, captain, was in charge of the Navy part. And so they put together a protocol. And so when Operation Homecoming happened in 1973, it was a whole unit, if you will. All the POWs were released kind of like at one time, February to April, something like that.
Right.
Versus Ukraine and Russia, the POWs come maybe now and then in 10s and 20s, whatever. These guys came over at one time, so we were able to establish a protocol Department of Defense wise, and each and every single one of those POWs had to go through a really, truly complete history and physical. Everything from an eye exam to neurology exam to nutrition, to psychology, to psychiatry, even pictures of them when they came back from POW status because of weight loss, physical abuse, things like that, see. And then, so it's a complete protocol. It's about 4 inches of pages 400 pages, 4 inches of pages, 4 inches thick of the protocol and 400 pages. Yeah. But it's all kind of computer IBM kind of card kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure. That's right. Made on a ditto machine.
Yeah. And you remember NASA, the reel-to-reel tapes,
Yeah, that's right.
thing too.
Yeah, for sure.
But it was that for 5 years. That's what the program was. And then the program was supposed to end.
Oh, was that right?
Yeah.
So they're only going to study them for the 5 years after they all came home, and then we're just going to see how they do, and then we'll move on after that.
That's right.
Okay. So they continued though.
Okay. So they designed the program because of our experience with the Japanese in the Pacific during World War II. Had some real issues there with some of the warriors who came home, and the Korean conflict had some issues as well. And because the average POW from Vietnam was longer than both the Japan and Korean conflict experiences, it was like 2.5 for those is the average years, and 5 years average for the Vietnam. And when you say average, that's the middle number, right? I know of a person 9 days short of 9 years.
Everett Alvarez. He was in there for that long?
He was the second longest.
Okay.
He was the first aviator POW, but it was the second longest.
Who was it?
It was a guy named Colonel Floyd James Thompson.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah.
9 years.
Yeah. He was special operations.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
And he survived.
And he survived.
That is amazing. Okay.
And just to throw another Navy personnel in there, the first person shot down was Navy Klusman, Charles Klusman. And he was shot down over toward the Laos border.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he escaped. So even though he was the first shot down, he escaped. So he wasn't held long.
Yeah.
He was in Hanoi. He escaped on the trail as they were moving him.
So Charlie alluded that we talked about that, in that he was really lucky to be shot down right near Hanoi, because if you were shot down hundreds of miles away and you were being transported to Hanoi or to a prison somewhere, you had a higher likelihood of actually being killed then by villagers, NVA, Viet Cong, whoever it was at the time. So your likeliness of actually making it there was worse.
Yep.
But so you wanted to be shot down and then taken quickly to the prison camp, because then you would survive in the prison camp. You just wouldn't know when you're going to be released, and you'd be tortured and everything like that. But it's better than dying in a rice paddy, somewhere in, like I said, near Laos or Cambodia.
Right.
So, wow. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So 1972 goes on for 5 years, and then they decide, though, obviously to keep it running.
Well, the Navy did. See, the Army and the Air Force, they stopped. Well, first of all, the Air Force didn't play very well. I probably shouldn't be saying that, but they didn't.
Okay.
The Army played.
Because this was supposed to be, like you said, a joint endeavor, though, for all of those POWs to go through this program, right?
Through their own service, that's correct.
Oh, through their own service.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's important, because we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Yeah, so through their own service, they're supposed to go through. Army played, but they played reluctantly. Air Force didn't play very well. They just did their own thing. And quite frankly, when the Air Force pilots learned about being grounded, none of them went to the program. And I think that's important to say, because, it talks about how we deal with people and cohorts, and what's the ramifications or unintended consequences, okay? So the Air Force, the pilots, it went out into the rumor mill, to the back channels, do not go to Brooks because you'll be grounded.
So they had POWs who came back and did not participate in the program.
Right.
Yeah. So, and again, I've actually, my joint education and tours have all been with the Air Force, and I have plenty of brothers and sisters in blue, but even they will say when we chat that the main difference between naval aviation and Air Force aviation, right, is that naval aviation, you're told essentially what you can't do, and in Air Force aviation, it's what you can do.
Right.
So that's interesting because that brings the same point to where in the Navy, they're probably a little more flexible, right? I mean, that is kind of the whole concept behind the sea service is that you're in a changing environment all the time. You have to adapt and overcome. And so the Navy will figure out a way to keep you flying while going through the program, because I know they all did, right?
That's
But then the Air Force was, if you report here and you go through this, you're going to be grounded, not going to fly for 2-3 years, maybe forever. Who knows?
Right.
And so no one really wanted to kind of participate in that. So they almost kind of shot themselves in the foot by doing that. Because if you look back at Charlie Plumb, John McCain, they all flew, you know, afterwards. So I'm sure Admiral Stockdale did as well.
That's
so
correct.
wow, that's a very, very interesting point.
You know, and I think we need to be honest about that because it's perhaps a mindset, perhaps a culture. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's what happened, you know. And quite frankly, because Charlie and company kept flying, Dr. Mitchell says exactly what you said. We're not going to ground you unless we find something wrong with you, you know. And until then, you're fit to fly. And so all the aviators that were POWs in Vietnam, they considered Dr. Mitchell their personal doc.
Oh, is that right?
So no matter where they were in Diego Garcia, you know, in San Diego, you know, wherever they were at, they would pick up the phone. Hey, Doc Mitchell, you know, I got this thing going on. What should I do? And he would tell them. So, you know, it was like,
wow.
Director, you know, VFR director, Dr. Mitchell.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly. And then you'd see your local flight surgeon and you'd be like, what's going on here? I talked to this guy over here. So you may want to talk to him. He's like, well, I'm your flight surgeon. No, yeah, but it's all right. You can talk to this guy. So, wow. Okay. They had a sea daddy, you know, flight surgeon, essentially. When did Mitchell stop doing it?
Oh my God. Never.
Is that right?
Almost never.
Okay.
Yeah. At, I think it was 91. And I couldn't tell you how old he was. 1991.
Wow. Well, he must have been pretty old in 72.
Yeah.
He was a captain in 72?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
I didn't tell you, but he was the research laboratory, the Navy research laboratory commander.
Yeah.
So he had all this research background to begin with. So when he was on the protocol, he put some good stuff in there.
Okay.
And what happened, too, is as the years went by, he said, using the scientific mind, he says, in order to have good studies, we need to have a comparison. You know, so he matched all the Navy POWs from Vietnam on 9 variables. Okay, things like you went to the academy, you're flying an F4, you know, you were on this boat, at this kind of combat tour, you know, on 9 variables. I can't remember exactly what they are, but there are 9 variables matched. The only difference between the 2 of those 9 variables is that one was a POW, one was not.
Okay.
Yeah, and the one that was not doesn't mean he saw combat, he was shot down, he escaped invaded, you know.
Okay.
He just wasn't a POW.
Yeah.
And so there's a comparison group that Dr. Mitchell created, and that was in 75, and the program ended in 78. And because of his, you know, history with the research, his history with the NAMI, he kept, and because of all the pilots kept coming to him, the program kept going.
Is that right?
Just by default. You know, and then in the mid-90s, when POWs became a concern, you might know I forget exactly when the national flag, that black flag, POW MIA, became a national ensign.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember that? Yeah. It's about the same time frame.
Yeah, I wonder.
Yeah.
Great question.
JPRA, the Joint Personnel Recovery Agency,
for sure.
An agency. It came from some agencies and combinations thereof, but it became its own agency in the 90s. Desert Storm was 91. Iraqi Freedom, you know, happened after that.
Yeah.
But when the Desert Storm folks were being repatriated.
There were a couple POWs then.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's fun because the doctor who was in charge of that reintegration part of the Desert Storm folks was a Air Force pilot who was a prisoner in Vietnam.
No kidding.
No kidding. Tom McNish.
Wow.
Right? So when he came back, he went to medical school, became a doctor. At the time that Desert Storm happened and repatriated Desert Storm, he was with the Air Force Surgeon General tasked to bring home the Desert Storm folks. And he went to the shelf to pull the book off the shelf as, how do you do this? And it wasn't there. It wasn't there. And that's, that's how JPRA comes into this. They actually decided to codify it, but that's after that. What Dr. McNish did, he visited Dr. Mitchell in Pensacola. I said, how did you do it?
Yeah.
What do I need to do?
So it was in 1991, 92 time frame, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh. And then I'm sure Mitchell was like, here's my 4-inch thick, book. Here, take and read this, right?
That's right.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It all comes back around.
It all comes back around.
Yeah.
And this is where it starts getting to be where we're starting to fight the next fight. Because you got a guy from Vietnam, Air Force pilot shot down.
Yep.
Trying to repatriate another subsequent conflict, and that SOP is not on the shelf.
Yeah.
Why wasn't it on the shelf?
And you probably couldn't have asked for a better person, right? Who was a POW, now working in that sphere to try to promote that, right? So yes, let's dive into that a little bit, right? How the Mitchell Center, like you said. So yeah, it is interesting, right? So Charlie told me this great stat as well, right? He said, I think out of all the aviators out of all the prisoners of war, it's a very low number of who suffer from post-traumatic stress. It's like 4%, I think is what he said.
Okay.
Whereas, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, but then for everyone else who served in country and saw combat, it's like 30% for PTS. And so we kind of talked about, how he attributed it to that. But what an incredible statistic for sure. But that's what you're trying to do now. So it wasn't just necessarily, hey, let's bring these guys back. Let's make sure they're okay. They're not suicidal. They're going to be reintegrated into society, come back with their families. But really to take it a step further, they say, well, how do we learn from this and then train our people to become more resilient if this ever happens again down in a future fight? So please, tell me about that.
That's correct. Yeah, and just to correct the stats a
Sure.
little bit.
Yep, please do.
He's correct in the 4%, but that was a cross-sectional study of a few people, kind of like midterm, like maybe at 15 or 20 years,
Okay.
And so the post-traumatic stress prevalence was an incidence is what it was.
Okay.
Is how many people develop post-traumatic stress, and it's 4%.
Okay.
At the end of the day, after 40 years, after 50 years, we know that the percentage of those Vietnam POWs have the same prevalence. Prevalence means how many of them have post-traumatic or was ever diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. It's the same as the U.S. population. Okay, so it's no different really. But the twist here is that they seem to be doing better managing the post-traumatic stress.
Is that right?
Than others. Yeah. And they attribute that because they kept coming back year after year. And that's part of the healing process.
I see. Okay.
They come back with the back seater or the front seater.
Yeah.
They talk about old times, and stuff like that. Yeah. And at that yearly, even though we don't treat, we're just evaluating. We're not a medical treatment facility. We're not treating. Okay. We're evaluating. We're studying for the next fight.
Yeah.
Lessons learned. The fact they come back is therapy.
Wow. So that's a second order effect.
It is
essentially of them coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And you obviously recognize that. Do they recognize that as well?
I think so. So. Mm-hmm.
Huh. Yeah. Because I just want to come back and get my blood drawn again, and this and that. But hey, I get to sit back and, like I said, chat it up with some other POWs.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Yeah.
And what's really neat about that is sometimes we have Desert Storm and Iraqi Freedom guys come when the Vietnam POWs come. It depends on their scheduling and how it matches.
Oh wow.
And now they can cross the cohorts.
Generational.
Yeah.
Generational prisoners of war.
Yeah.
So okay. I know I just asked you to talk about the lessons learned, but you caught me right there. So I just read, so it's when I was in my first air wing and deployment 99, 2001 time frame, we actually had a strike fighter pilot named Devin Jones, Boots Jones. He was one of the first guys shot down for Desert Storm.
Okay.
And he was rescued. He was an F-14 guy at the time, but his Rio was actually captured.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of his name now, and I can't remember it. And then, but like I said, I don't know how many how many prisoners were during Desert Storm? Do you know off the top of your head?
Actually, I'm going to say 21. I think it's about 20-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Not, I mean, it was a very short, obviously,
Right.
conflict and,
Right.
and whatnot. And then for OIF, do you know off the top of your head?
18.
18.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ish. Yeah.
Okay. And again, to make sure I didn't hear it wrong, this is all services.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All services.
Mhm.
So those people, those 20 or whatever it is, 21 and 18, come here every year and do this.
Actually, not as well as the Vietnam guys.
No
You know,
kidding.
yeah. And here's a lesson learned here.
Okay.
Is that they weren't held as long.
Yeah. Okay.
They didn't have the command and control and communications in camp. You heard about the tab code.
Tab code, yeah,
and
for
all
sure.
that. You know, you had the return with honor. You know, you had this code. So they all behaved as warriors in camp. They resisted somehow in some way.
Yeah.
But they were able to talk, though they weren't supposed to talk. They talked through other means. And I think that kind of environment, that culture, is what carries on. Whereas the guys from Operation Desert Storm and Iraqi Freedom did not. So they don't come on such a regular basis. But we've got an outreach program trying to bring them in.
Is that right?
Yeah. To do that.
Yeah.
To show the value. Yeah. But we have, a handful of those who cross the cohorts. Yeah.
That is pretty neat. If
Yeah.
they're able to be here at different times, like I said, different generations.
Can I share an experience with you?
Of course.
About the command and control, how important that is and how it is pervasive
Uh-huh.
and perseveres?
Yeah.
Okay. So I went to one of the POW reunions in Dallas, Texas, right?
Okay.
And my first time with them, and I was just going as a flight surgeon, monitoring the aviation group in their environment, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Outside looking in, right?
Outside looking.
I'm just an observer.
Right.
Okay.
See what's going on. And you just need to watch all the guys interact. And I'm talking Air Force, Navy, Marines, and a few of the Army guys, but it's mostly those three, the aviators. The Army guys, mostly ground pounders. But, and so we were getting ready in the lobby of the hotel to get on the buses in Dallas to go somewhere. And then all of a sudden there was a change of plans, and I was standing by the person who got the first word of the plans changing, And so what's he doing today? Is, goes down and he starts typing, I think he's going to type, his friend, his wife, whatever,
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden I see in the whole crowd in the lobby, all the heads go down to their phones. The communication went out instantaneously. I said, holy smokes. If I didn't see that, believe that their practice in camp was still present. It was I forget what it was, 2000 and, 14 or 15, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So smartphones with apps are a thing.
Yeah.
And so that is now
The
their
new
form of
tap code.
Exactly.
All the heads went down to their phones at the same time. I said, holy smokes. That's command and control right there.
Yeah, you're right. It is. So when I asked Charlie the three things that kept him going, it was faith, community, and communication. Those were the three things that essentially kept him alive during his time there. And we talked extensively about, use of, like I said, the tap code and whatnot, and being able to teach through the tap code, teach somebody something, through a wall.
That's right.
I mean, wow, that is amazing. So,
yeah.
Wow, that's a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a great story. Very cool. All right, so let's let's go roundabout. So, become a contractor in 2012.
Yep.
But did you know when you retired, you're in Huntsville, your wife's already here, planned on retiring here. I mean, you could have gone and done anything else or worked at NAMI. I mean, NAMI's a big command. They need flight surgeons. I'm sure they're kind of,
that's
but you're like, I want to go work there. Is that what you said? Or you just happened to stumble upon it, like, oh, it's an opportunity. I think I'll take that. And this stuff really interests me, or not?
But you're exactly right. I kind of stumbled upon it.
Wow. Okay.
Kind of. I knew about the program. I knew, what they did. I didn't have any intimate experience.
Okay.
But I heard they were hiring because the contract doctors before me were retiring.
Okay.
So I heard about it and said, well, yeah, this is what I got to do.
Wow, no kidding.
Getting back to NAMI, getting back to the flight surgeons, because I have that, that kinship, belonging with community.
Yeah.
These are my folks, my
Sure.
flight surgeon buddies, and work with them and work on the same population. It's like, yeah, I've got to do that. Really didn't know what I was doing with the POWs, to tell you the truth, but I want to
Is that all right? It's almost like blind faith a little bit.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take the leap.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
But working back with the active duty folks, yes, that was paramount for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I could see that. I mean, so many people, I retired last year, and I can see so many people still, after they transition and retire, still how they want, a connection with the DoD in some way, shape, or form, because that's what we've done for 20 plus years, however many years it was, that we're in.
That's
so
right.
you want to have that connection with that community of people, of former war fighters, or whatever technical, expertise they had at the time. And you're a doctor. So, I mean, you put a lot of time and effort into being a doc.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, why not keep doing that? Like, it's like kind of like being a pilot, right? Why
You're
not
right.
keep flying?
Right.
It's a pretty worthwhile skill that, that takes years of training and expertise. So, wow. Okay. So what was your first impression when you got there and you said, wow, I'm actually going to be doing this. This is cool.
My first impression was I loved waking up every morning to go to work.
Yeah. Can't beat that.
Yeah, because after the first few weeks, I realized, wow, I'm talking to the guys I read about when I was younger, and now I'm talking to them. And then I would ask them questions, outside of medicine.
Sure.
But it's kind of like a social thing, Well, tell me about this time. And then you hear the story coming from them. And then what you read in the book and how you hear it coming from them, it just makes it, more real, changes the perspective, or you get a better appreciation. And then start thinking about, after time goes on, well, what about the next conflict? What did you really learn from these guys that we can give to the next guys? Because to me, it was new when I heard it, because I was not a POW. I just went to SEER school, and how they did that. And I said, okay, now how about in the future when you have more POWs? Because I didn't know anything about POWs when I took the program. I just liked coming back to DOD,
Okay.
In terms of really what was going on. But it was through all of that I learned that. Then I started thinking ahead, saying, well, how can we translate this to next generations?
Okay, so when you got there, then that was not instilled in the program.
No.
There was just a study, like you said, a study for former prisoners of war from these conflicts. But really, how do we now train for the future fight?
Right.
That was all your idea?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So tell me more about that then. So what are you looking at then from here to say, hey, how do we need to prepare now for a possible, conflict with a great power, somewhere that deals then now that is prolonged? It could be. I mean, there's lots of talk about, the future of warfare, how it's really going to go down, if it's going to be, we're talking hypersonic missile stuff's going to happen so much quicker. Is the conflict then going to be more, is it going to be over a shorter span like how it has in the past? Or is it going to be drawn out? I mean, no one ever thought we'd be in Afghanistan for 20 years.
Right.
But obviously that wasn't the same thing as, like I said, I don't know if we didn't have any prisoners out of Afghanistan, did we? We've had MIA.
Yeah.
MIA, but I don't know of any returned POWs.
Nope.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, but anyway, so please tell, so how now are you taking this and turning it to that future fight?
Okay, so as a contractor, I've got no authority. I got the expertise.
Yeah. Got it.
But what happens in my head happens in my head, and
Okay.
I store it in the back and pull it out when I need it, just like the Space Command, surgeon. And so when I became the program manager in 2018, and I had the authority to think about the next 5 years.
Got it.
And I think based on prior program directors' trends and tendencies, we just good research, good science, but it was just kind of like I'm just doing research on publish it and put it on a shelf.
Yeah.
I said, well, we need to make us more value added to current operations.
Yeah, love it.
And I think that's part of the Army coming in. How do we affect the fight?
Sure.
To prevent medicine. How do we affect keep the war in there? How do we make this command better? It's still along the same thread the way I'm wired. And so I said, well, we can do some high level research, which takes a long time to go through.
Okay.
and the wars will be over and started before we even get the paper published.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, great point.
But do some kind of research at a certain level that we can get out to the command quicker. So I think my focus was more operation oriented. How can we do this research? And if given the distributed maritime operations, you were talking about decentralized things developing in the Navy, all those things you mentioned before. I see that, and they're going to be the young warrior out there on the boat making those decisions. And they can't call back to Washington to ask, should I take a left or should I take a right?
That's right.
They got to deal with what they got. And if they're going to be young like that, then what kind of resilience do they have? Do they come with the genes? Can you train it? Can you train the military? And that stuff. So now you look at the psychological side of that. Well, what do we know about the psychology of adolescent development? Because we get them at adolescence, right? His mom, dad, community. Charlie's a community. It's all that they could come to the boot camp with. And if they don't come to boot camp like that, can we give it to them?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's those questions aren't answered. I know the next cohort is going to be younger than the aviator population. Who've been around the block a couple of times.
Oh, right. You're saying because where the fight is going to take place, it's going to probably, like I said, ground war, surface Navy type thing, not necessarily air war guys getting shot down, one of those things. So that cohort or that group of people is going to be of a younger age.
The cohort's going to be younger, correct. Yeah. Exactly.
And with today, and like I said, the military is a direct reflection of society. 100%. So the military gets what it gets, right? When we recruit.
Right.
So you got to be ready then for today's generation to be able to, like I said, do they have those traits that we need in order for them to be able to survive and thrive in combat situations?
Right.
Yeah. I know there's a lot of people out there who have lots of opinions about that.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And as we think about that, we're talking about the logistics train, getting the supplies to the warriors out there in the Pacific, and then bringing back the casualties and bringing back the reintegrated people.
Yeah.
So we got to think about the plans. How do we leverage from other SOPs that are already out there kind of thing, So a major thing I worry about is I'm worried about the next, what can we train to teach the new cohort to go that may be developed from the next battle? What can we train before they get there? And two, when we get them back, how am I going to get the medical records? That's part of course, research, right? I need those medical records. In Vietnam, I mentioned the fact that they all came back at one time. Desert Storm came back at one time. Iraqi Freedom came back at one time, But if you have this big area, the Pacific, which is huge, 1% of that's only landmass. The rest of it is water. How am I going to get those records? Because we need those baseline records for the longitudinal studies. So I've got to be a critical mission partner to JPRA, the Joint Personnel Recovery Agency, because they have the big picture of the enterprise,
right?
And they know the personalities, So I need to network with those folks, in order to see what are you guys doing, what's your plans for this, And then when you're done with your stuff, we need those records, I got to figure out how are we going to get those records, I can't go running over to Guam and pick up the records. We have to put into the training program. Hey, you docs who are out there in Guam, understand there's a reintegration process, and these records need to go back.
That's a very interesting point.
So, and that's just more than medicine,
Yeah, right.
That's program development, Yeah.
Okay. You did mention JPRA real quick too. So Joint Personnel Recovery Agency, they've, like I said, I think been around for quite some time. They are the model managers for personnel recovery. If everyone doesn't know what personnel recovery is, the definition is essentially, I guess, returning of isolated personnel, if you want to kind of put it that way. Isolated personnel could be, that a pretty wide definition too. But
to
really
include POWs. POWs would be a small subset of the isolated personnel.
Yeah,
you're exactly right.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So it could be, like I said, someone who ejects and is evading It could be someone in a prison. It could be a convoy. That's one thing I think we learned in OIF early on too, was that you have convoys, the Army convoys that go out and they get rolled up, by the enemy, and now those people are now captive and they don't have isopreps.
Right.
So, which is a isolated personnel report, right? Been a while. Filled out lots of them. Had lots of pictures taken for isopreps and like I said, filled them out and had them on file. But it's been a few years since I've had to do one. But yeah, so everyone who was essentially high risk of capture was, had to fill out an isoprep. Well, I think now, after learning through OIF and OEF, isopreps have become pretty much, I think, widespread probably almost through all the whole services.
Yeah, you
now,
go in
right?
theater, you have one.
Yeah,
That's
right.
correct.
If you go in theater, you're going to have one,
Yeah.
even if you're, a rifleman to a cook.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, but anyway, going back to JPRA, yeah, I attended one of their courses, back in the day. Great command. I think it's is it a 2-star that runs JPRA now? I want to say, I can't remember. But then it's like I said, Joint Command. So we have a mutual friend, Commander Mike Margolius, call sign Farva. Yeah, so he was at JPRA for a few years, and I think that's actually how you two met. He worked with me he was a JO in my squadron. I was in a department head when I was a CO of a squadron, so we go back a little bit. So shout out to Farva. But he's a big proponent of personnel recovery, as I am, being a former helicopter pilot, where one of our primary missions was combat search and rescue. So we dealt with all that, overland missions, overwater missions as well, to, try to prevent someone from being rolled up and becoming a prisoner, and
That's right.
Bringing them back, and essentially it was all about bringing them back to be able to fight again. I mean, that's the whole idea behind personnel recovery, right? It's, like you said, the POW side is a very small side of it, but really it's so that people can come back and go back to the fight.
Yep.
Yeah.
Get back in the game.
Yeah,
that's right.
Exactly.
Yep.
Which I think full circle goes back to your whole idea behind when you became the surgeon, for the Army, for the missile defense side, because you want your people, like I said, resilient, mentally and physically, be able to handle the stress of being in combat or executing orders that, have consequences. Put it that way. Right? Yeah. So very cool.
Yeah, let me just digress on that point real quick, because the question is, we talked about me coming down to Pensacola as a Army liaison. My first experience with the Navy was in the Persian Gulf in 1988.
Okay.
And you're talking about, I have a little fire or passion in me to make sure that we train everybody before they go to the fight.
Yeah.
Because I was not, and I did not like that feeling. And I'll tell you what it was. I loved the experience. Don't get me wrong, but it was trial by fire, but not real bad fire. It wasn't a hot fire.
You got a little burned or like a little singed?
Yeah, that's
maybe?
right. Seared.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Not well done.
Yeah. So I was at Fort Rucker in the clinic doing sick call and physical exams, what doctors do, the hospital situation. And there was Operation Prime Chance. Was 1988. Do you remember
I don't think so.
As in the Persian Gulf.
Okay.
That was to protect the tankers.
Oh, yeah. Tanker war.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
That going through Strait of Hormuz.
That's right.
So the Navy was lead agent on that, and Army was special ops on that.
Okay.
This was the days when the Army was developing night vision goggle flying.
Yeah. Yep.
And then we even had a bird that had kind of like a flare on it. That was a technology was starting then. But the Army would fly off of a barge. It was contracted. And they do night ops. And the Navy had PT boats, and they'd be looking for the bad guys, right? And so they plucked me out of the hospital and plugged me into the Special Forces unit, and then I met the SEALs, and I met rebreathers, I'm going, and I met this armament that, the Vulcan, I think it's called, the Vulcan. Yeah, is a gun where when it burps, it sounds like it's burping.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a kind of
it's a Gatling gun.
It's a Gatling gun, yeah. It's got brass that's high off the ground after a 3-second burp.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
it puts it out quick.
Serious firepower. That's when I learned all that kind of stuff, But I didn't know it when I went in, so I was kind of uncomfortable going in, but I adapted on the fly. And I had good corpsmen to help me out, I had good Army guys to help me out too, and to give me the wherewithal of what, this would be like. Now, I was never under fire, thank God, but, we were we were in the combat zone looking for the bad guys. I just never experienced any of that, But I think it's important that we send not only medical guys into the fight, they know what the mission is, know what the ramifications are. Because I thought I was just treating the Army guys, but I was the only doc on the boat. So I treated the area.
Okay.
And that's a nuance, but it's important to know.
No, for sure.
So as a matter of fact, there was a civilian tanker called up, hey, we just had a cook, he had a flash burn on his face. Can we wait till we get into port? I'm going.
And they're like, hey, get hold of the doc, right? And then next thing you know, you're getting asked those questions.
Yeah, that's right. And I didn't know anything about jurisdictions, liability. This is a civilian, I'm a DOD,
Right.
What's the ramifications? Can I do that? Well, it turned out that I said, you got to, I'm not getting the information I need, because if you get a flash burn to the face, if it's just the face, it's one thing. But if it gets into your nose, into your mouth, then you got swelling of your inside.
Oh, yeah.
And then you can't breathe. And that becomes an emergency.
Sure.
If it's just a face, yeah, you can wait to a port. But I wasn't getting the communications through, the information through the communication means that I got.
Yeah.
And so they came and they lowered me onto the deck, and I went and checked out the patient.
You did that? Very cool.
Yep.
Not too many people get to ride the hoist on a helicopter.
That's right. Yep.
So, wow. In 1988.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's awesome.
1 year out of internship.
No kidding.
Yep.
Wow. You've had some pretty good experiences for a flight surgeon. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
That's cool. Very
and that's
cool.
where that's where I learned to love the Navy.
Yeah.
This is really cool crap. This is really cool.
Yeah. and now you're essentially in the Navy.
Correct.
Yeah. At least for the last 13 years.
Yes.
Yeah. Plan is to keep on going with this. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. And when so I was able to visit you over at the center, and you gave me a tour, which was fantastic. Thanks again for doing that.
You're welcome.
Very small staff. All right. So it's you have a corpsman, right? And then you have, at the time, you had a gapped billet for a psychologist.
That's correct. Research psychologist.
And is that filled now?
It's filled now. Thank God.
Great. And then there's one other. There's essentially 4 of you. Is that right?
Yeah, the office manager, the business. Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
Who runs this program that's trying to, like you said, build the best plan for prisoners of war in the next fight.
Right.
To study the past and bring action to the future.
That's correct.
4 of you.
I like that. That's it. Elevator.
Man, that's that is quite the requirement. I will say. Yeah. And then you are under NAMI.
Under NAMI, that's correct.
Okay.
And NAMI is under NMOTC, which is the Navy Medical Operations Training Command.
Okay.
That's an echelon 4.
Did they just have their change of command not too long ago?
Not them.
No, okay.
It's one of the attachments.
Somebody else. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I think they actually had their here. So we're coming to the end here, but I want to give a quick plug. I know not everyone can go over to the Mitchell Center and go check it out. But if you have the chance and you're here in Pensacola, come to the museum. We're opening up a brand new exhibit called Return with Honor. Essentially, it's the Vietnam POW experience. We are doing the commemoration for it on Friday, September 19th, which is National POW MIA Recognition Day. So we're gonna have a few POWs who are going to be in town for it. It's going to be fantastic. But I welcome anyone who comes to Pensacola, comes down here. Please come check this out. I'm obviously biased, but in my opinion, it's going to be the best exhibit that we have here at the museum, and we have incredible exhibits and artifacts here at the museums and great stories to be told. So,
you bet. Did you want to mention anything about the POWs who might be coming to watch that opening?
Oh, I'm not sure who is coming yet.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I think we have like 4 who are able to make it. Unfortunately, Charlie will not be able to make it. But one of the cool things about it is inside the exhibit, we have a hologram of one of the POWs where you can ask him questions, and it's Everett Alvarez as the hologram.
Right.
So who, like I said, was shot down in 1964.
Right.
Yeah, and wasn't released until 1973.
Yeah.
So, amazing.
Yeah.
So, Doc, anything else you want to close with?
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for coming today. I appreciate you coming to the Ready Room.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure and an honor.
All right. Thanks.
Yes. All right.
Thank you for joining us on this flight through history and innovation here at the Ready Room. We hope today's episode inspired you with new insights and the incredible stories that make naval aviation so extraordinary. If you enjoyed the journey, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the podcast with your network. It helps us reach more listeners like you. Don't forget to visit the National Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola, Florida, or explore our online resources at navalaviationmuseum.org to dive deeper into the stories we've shared. Follow us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and a sneak peek at upcoming episodes. Until next time, thanks for listening to Ready Room. See you on the next flight.